Welcome back, everyone. In this lecture, we're going to discuss functions and returning multiple items from a function with tuple unpacking. Let's get started. Now recall that we've previously seen we can loop through a list of tuples and unpack the values within them. For example, let me create a list of tuple called stock prices. And what I'm going to do here is the first item will be a ticker and then that stock's price. So we'll say Apple is at 200, and I'm just completely making up these numbers. Then we'll say Google is at, say, $400. And then finally, we'll say Microsoft, $100. Okay, so we already know that I can actually say for item in stock prices, print item, and it prints out the tuples. I also know that I can do tuple unpacking, which means I can actually individually grab the items from these tuples. So I can say for price, or actually for ticker and price in stock prices, print, let's say, just a ticker. Run that, and what it's doing is it's unpacking ticker and price separately, so I can do different things with them, such as ticker, or maybe I can say print price plus, let's say, 0.1 times price. So I want to see what a 10% increase would look like. So I can run that, and now I can see a 10% increase in the prices. Okay, so that's tuple unpacking. Now we've seen how we can do it with a for loop, but we can also do it with a function. So a function can actually return things as tuples, and then we can unpack the result from the function. So let's go ahead and do kind of a more complicated example here. I'm going to say work hours, and this is going to be a list of tuples that has an employee name, let's say Abby, and then the hours they happen to work that particular month. So we have Abby at 100 hours. Let's go ahead and have Billy at 400 hours, just kind of making these up. And then let's have Cassie, whoops, make sure that's a string, at 800 hours. So kind of extreme values here, but they're totally made up. Okay, so we have these work hours over some period of time. And now what we want to do is we want to see who is the employee of the month or the employee of the year. And the way we judge that is by the employee that has worked the most hours. And we want to return not just the employee name, but also the amount of hours worked. So I need a function that can actually then go through these tuples and then see the name and the corresponding hours and keep track of the name that has the most hours. So how can we do this? I'll create a function called employee check, and it accepts this list of tuples, work hours. And then as I've stated before, typically we're going to have placeholder variables when it comes to logic at the very top of a function. So I'm going to have two placeholder variables. I'm going to have a current max, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. And then I'm going to have an employee, let's say of the month in this case. We'll say employee of month, and that's equal to an empty string. Because at the end, I intend to return a tuple. So I intend to return a tuple that says employee of the month along with the current max, which is the current max hours. So why do I have current max equal to 0, and what is current max going to do? Well, what current max is going to do is it's going to start off at 0, and then it's going to compare each employee's hours to the current max hours. And if they beat the current max hours, then I will reset the current max to their value, and I'll reset the employee of the month to this string. So we have to do a for loop to see this. We'll say for, and here we'll do some tuple unpacking, for employee, comma, hours, in work hours, which recall is this list of tuples. What I'm going to do is I'm first going to check if the hours that they've worked is greater than my current max, then I'm going to reset my current max equal to the hours that that particular employee worked. And then the employee of the month is going to be equal to the employee in that tuple. So what does that actually mean? Well, recall that my current max starts off at 0. So immediately, the very first person I see has beat supposedly 0 hours. So that means Abby starts off as employee of the month, and my current max hours to beat is 100 hours. Otherwise, I'll simply pass. So let's go ahead and see what happens when we reach Billy. We see Billy, we extract Billy's hours is 400. Is that greater than the current max hours? Well, in this case it is, because Abby only worked 100. So then I reset the current max, essentially the target to beat, as 400, and then I set Billy as the employee of the month. And I keep going throughout this. So then Cassie is going to end up beating Billy's 400 hours, and then she'll be the employee of the month. And what I'm going to do is return this then as a tuple. So again, here's all the code. Let me go out one level of zoom so we can see this all. Going to run this, and let's run our employee check. And I'm going to run it on my current existing work hours. That's the variable we first assigned. And as we suspected, Cassie won. So let's make sure this is working. Let's go ahead and say Billy worked 4,000 hours. So we run this again, employee check, run that, and now I see Billy 4,000. So again, what it's doing here is it's just tracking who worked the max hours and essentially who do we have to beat. And eventually what's going to happen is we'll find out who worked the max hours because no one will start beating this equation right here of hours greater than the current max, which means we never ended up resetting current max and we never end up overriding that employee of the month. So essentially once Billy comes in and he hits 4,000, Cassie doesn't end up beating him with 800, so Billy stays as the assigned variable employee of the month. Now we just saw this returned back this tuple. So what we can do is two things. I can either say result is equal to employee check, and if I take a look at result, it says Billy 4,000, or just as before with the for loop where I said ticker comma price, I can do the same thing if a function returns back this tuple. So it's really common to see something like this. I can say name comma hours is equal to employee check work hours, run that, and note what happened. Unlike before where result, if we see it here, is the tuple, I did tuple unpacking, and now I have the name Billy and hours as separate variables. So I can actually perform tuple unpacking with a function call. Now, a really common error is when you're using someone else's function or a function from a different library that you're not too familiar with, maybe we think that, oh, this function also gives the employee's location. So let's see the result here. Let's say name, comma hours, comma location. Now I know for a fact it doesn't report back the location. If you run this, you get an error. And this is a very common error where it says not enough values to unpack. And very common error to get when you're dealing with functions that you don't 100% know what they return. So you notice here, it actually tells you, hey, expected 3 got 2. Expected 3 is basically what you expected. You expected 3 values, but you only got 2. So how do you actually deal with this sort of error? The easiest way is to just assign everything to a single item and then begin exploring that item. And then you can see, oh, I only have those 2 values and it looks like it was a name and the hours. I don't actually have a third location item. All right, that's it for returning tuples for unpacking. Again, you can review this when we discussed for loops as far as tuple unpacking within a for loop, and you can kind of review this function call in the lecture notebook. If you have any questions, feel free to post to Q&A forums. We'll finish off this lecture series by just creating a very simple function program that essentially shows interactions between functions. I'll see you at the next lecture.